After my wife passed away, her daughters didn't come to comfort me. They came with documents, sign over the house, the business, everything they said. You were only married for 4 years. My lawyer warned me to fight. My son begged me to stop. I didn't listen. At the meeting, I signed every paper they placed in front of me without reading a single word. Across the table, they smiled, certain they had already won. Then their lawyer suddenly went quiet. His face drained as he said, "There's one more document we need to review. Welcome and thank you for being here. Take a moment to comment where you're watching from so I know who I'm sharing this story with. And just a quick note, parts of this story have been lightly fictionalized for storytelling and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real names or places is purely coincidental, but the message itself is completely real." My name is Thomas Whitmore, and I'm 67 years old. For the past 4 years, I lived what I thought was a second chance at happiness with my wife Margaret in our home just outside Calgary. She died 3 weeks ago. Heart attack. Sudden, no warning. One moment she was laughing at something on the television. The next, she was gone. The paramedics said she likely didn't feel any pain. I'm not sure if that makes it better or worse. Margaret had 2 daughters from her first marriage. Vanessa, 32, works as a corporate accountant in Toronto. Rebecca, 29, runs a boutique marketing agency in Vancouver. Both successful, both polished, both absolutely certain that I had manipulated their mother into marrying me for her money. The truth? Margaret pursued me. We met at a grief support group. She'd lost her first husband to cancer 5 years before we met. I'd lost my wife Elena to the same disease 7 years earlier. We understood each other's pain in a way that no one else could. We weren't looking for love. We were just two broken people who found comfort in shared silence. My son Christopher is 35. He teaches high school mathematics in Edmonton, makes maybe $53,000 a year, lives in a small apartment, drives a 12-year-old Honda, never asks me for anything. When I told him I was marrying Margaret, he just hugged me and said he was happy I wouldn't be alone anymore. Margaret had built a successful business importing specialty foods from Europe, nothing massive, but profitable. Her house in the suburbs was worth about $2.8 million. She had investment portfolios worth another $2 million, maybe a bit more. The business itself generated steady income, comfortable retirement money. I brought nothing to the marriage except my pension and the small house Elena and I had bought when Christopher was born. Margaret didn't care. She said she'd rather live modestly with someone who actually loved her than die wealthy and lonely. We had 4 good years. Really good years. We traveled, we laughed, we built a life together. She never once made me feel like I was anything other than her equal partner. The day after Margaret's funeral, Vanessa and Rebecca came to the house. They didn't knock. They still had keys from before I moved in. I was sitting in the living room, still wearing the suit from the service. Christopher had just left to drive back to Edmonton. He'd offered to stay longer, but I told him I needed some time alone. Vanessa walked in first. Designer suit. Hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. Rebecca followed, equally polished. They didn't offer condolences. They didn't ask how I was holding up. Vanessa pulled out her phone and started scrolling through something. "Thomas, we need to discuss the estate," she said. "No, hello. No sitting down. Just straight to business." "Your mother just died yesterday," I said quietly. "Which is exactly why we need to handle this now," Rebecca interjected, "before things get complicated." I stared at them. "Complicated?" Vanessa finally looked up from her phone. "You were married to our mother for 4 years, Thomas. 4 years. Rebecca and I are her biological children. We've been her daughters for our entire lives." "I'm aware of that," I said. "Then you understand why we need you to sign these." Rebecca placed a folder on the coffee table. "Our lawyer prepared everything. It's a simple acknowledgement that you're relinquishing any claim to Mom's estate. The house, the business, the investments, all of it." I didn't touch the folder. "Your mother and I were married. Alberta is a matrimonial property province. We know what the law says," Vanessa snapped. "We also know you didn't contribute a single dollar to anything she built. You moved into her house. You benefited from her success. And now that she's gone, you think you're entitled to half of everything?" "I never said that." "You don't have to say it. The law would give it to you automatically if you fought us." Rebecca sat down across from me. Her voice softened, but her eyes remained cold. "Look, Thomas, we're trying to be reasonable here. We're not throwing you out on the street. We're offering you $300,000. That's more than generous, considering you brought nothing to this marriage. 300,000, I repeated. Cash. Within 60 days. You sign these documents, you move out within 90 days, and you walk away with more money than you probably had in your entire life before you met our mother. The words hung in the air like poison. I thought about Margaret, about how she'd warned me, gently, that her daughters had become fixated on inheritance after their father died, how they'd stopped calling unless they wanted something, how they'd skipped our wedding because they couldn't get time off work. And if I don't sign? I asked. Vanessa's expression hardened. Then we contest everything. We have lawyers who will tie this up in court for years. We'll argue that you exerted undue influence over our mother, that she wasn't in her right mind when she married you, that you isolated her from her family. I never isolated Margaret from anyone. You two barely visited. That's your word against ours, Rebecca said smoothly. And we have emails, text messages, documentation of how our relationship with Mom deteriorated after you entered the picture. I looked at these two women, Margaret's daughters. She'd shown me photos of them as children, smiling, playing, full of life. I couldn't reconcile those images with the cold strangers sitting in my living room, trying to bully me out of everything their mother had built. I need to think about this, I said. Think fast, Vanessa said, standing up. We'll be back in 3 days. If you haven't signed by then, our offer drops to 200,000. And if you still refuse, we start legal proceedings. She paused at the door. Oh, and Thomas? Change the locks if you want. This is our mother's house. We'll just get a court order. They left. The folder remained on the coffee table like a coiled snake. I called Christopher that evening, told him everything. He was furious. Dad, you can't let them do this. Get a lawyer. Fight them. I'm tired, son, I said. I just buried my wife. I don't have the energy to fight her daughters. Then let me fight for you. I'll find a lawyer. I'll handle everything. Christopher, no. I appreciate it, but no. He was quiet for a long moment. They're wrong about you, Dad. You know that, right? You made Mom happy. That's worth more than all her money combined. I couldn't speak past the lump in my throat. 3 days later, Vanessa and Rebecca returned. Same expensive clothes. Same entitled expressions. I'd barely slept, barely eaten. The house felt too big and too empty without Margaret. Have you made your decision? Vanessa asked. I nodded. I'll sign. Rebecca actually smiled. Smart choice. Really, Thomas. This is better for everyone. You get a fresh start. We preserve what our mother built, and nobody has to waste money on lawyers. When can we get this done? I asked. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Our lawyer's office downtown. Bring identification. Vanessa was already heading for the door. Oh, and start packing. We want to list the house by the end of the month. That night, I sat in the study where Margaret used to work. Her reading glasses were still on the desk. A half-finished crossword puzzle sat next to her favorite pen. I picked up the pen and turned it over in my hands, remembering how she'd chew on the cap when she was thinking. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Whitmore? This is Patricia Hammond. I was your wife's attorney. Oh, hello, Miss Hammond. Please, call me Patricia. I heard about Margaret's passing. I'm so very sorry for your loss. She was a remarkable woman. Thank you. Mr. Whitmore, I understand that Margaret's daughters have approached you about the estate. I froze. How did you know that? Because Margaret anticipated it. That's why I'm calling. You have a meeting scheduled tomorrow at 10 a.m., correct? Yes. To sign documents relinquishing my claim to the estate. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Mr. Whitmore, I'm Margaret's estate attorney. I prepared her will. I can assure you that whatever documents Vanessa and Rebecca have prepared, they are not consistent with your wife's wishes. What do you mean? I mean, you need to attend that meeting tomorrow. But before you sign anything, I need to be there. Please don't argue with me on this. It's what Margaret wanted. I don't understand. You will. Tomorrow at 10. What's the address? I gave her the information. Patricia, what's going on? Margaret loved you very much, Mr. Whitmore. She also knew her daughters better than they think she did. Just trust me. Go to the meeting. Don't sign anything until I arrive. She hung up before I could ask anything else. The next morning, I put on my best suit, the same one I'd worn to Margaret's funeral. Christopher had wanted to come with me, but I told him to stay in Edmonton. This was something I needed to handle alone. The law office was in one of those glass towers downtown, 30th floor. The receptionist directed me to a conference room where Vanessa, Rebecca, and a man in an expensive suit were waiting. Thomas. Good, you're on time. Vanessa gestured to a chair. This is Lawrence Chen, our attorney. Chen stood and shook my hand. Firm grip, calculating eyes. Mr. Whitmore, I understand you've agreed to the settlement terms. I have all the documents prepared. This shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. I thought I should have my own lawyer present, I said. Rebecca's expression tightened. That wasn't part of our agreement. We didn't have an agreement. You made an offer. I said I'd consider it. You said you'd sign, Vanessa said sharply. I said I'd come to this meeting. And I have. Chen cleared his throat. Mr. Whitmore, of course you're entitled to legal representation. However, I should point out that delaying this process will only cost everyone more money. These documents are straightforward. You're simply acknowledging that you're waiving your spousal rights to the estate in exchange for the settlement amount. $300,000, I said. Correct. And what exactly am I waiving rights to? Chen pulled out a folder. Mrs. Whitmore's estate includes the residence at 4,127 Pinewood Crescent, valued at approximately $2.8 million. Her business, Heritage Imports, with assets totaling roughly $1.4 million, investment portfolios worth $2.3 million, and various other accounts bringing the total estate value to approximately $6.7 million. So you're offering me less than 5% of what my wife left behind. Vanessa leaned forward. Our mother left behind, and you're getting far more than you deserve for 4 years of marriage. The door opened. Patricia Hammond walked in. She was probably in her mid-50s, wearing a navy suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Everything about her radiated competence and authority. I'm sorry I'm late, she said pleasantly. Traffic was terrible. Chen stood. I'm sorry. Who are you? Patricia Hammond. I'm Mr. Whitmore's attorney, and more relevantly, I was Margaret Whitmore's estate attorney. She set her briefcase on the table and looked at Vanessa and Rebecca. Hello, girls. It's been a while. Rebecca's face had gone pale. What are you doing here? Representing my client's interests, and ensuring that his late wife's wishes are properly executed. Patricia pulled out a chair next to me and sat down. Now then, Mr. Chen, I understand you've prepared some documents for Mr. Whitmore to sign? Chen recovered quickly. Yes. A settlement agreement wherein Mr. Whitmore waives his spousal claims to the estate in exchange for a cash payment. How much? $300,000. Patricia didn't even blink. I see. And you advised your clients that this is appropriate compensation? Given the short duration of the marriage and Mr. Whitmore's lack of financial contribution to the estate. Yes. Interesting. Patricia opened her briefcase and removed a document. Because I have Margaret Whitmore's last will and testament here, executed 8 days before her death. Would you like to know what it says? The room went absolutely silent. Vanessa found her voice first. Our mother died of a sudden heart attack. She didn't have time to change her will. On the contrary, Margaret came to my office specifically to update her will 2 weeks before she died. She said she had a feeling. I tried to tell her she was being morbid, but she insisted. Patricia looked at me. She loved you very much, Thomas. She wanted to make sure you were protected. Protected from what? Rebecca demanded. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. From exactly this situation. Before I tell you what that will actually says, comment still here so I know you're still with me. Please note, the next part of this story includes a few fictionalized details added to deepen the emotional impact. If you'd rather not continue, you can stop the video here. Margaret predicted, quite accurately, that her daughters would attempt to pressure Thomas into relinquishing his rights to the estate. She opened the will. Shall I read the relevant portions? This is absurd, Vanessa said. Whatever document you have, it can't supersede our rights as her biological children. You're absolutely correct. It doesn't supersede your rights. It defines them very clearly. Patricia began reading. I, Margaret Ann Whitmore, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament. To my beloved husband, Thomas Whitmore, I leave our home at 4,127 Pinewood Crescent, all contents thereof, my share of Heritage Imports, and the entirety of my investment portfolios. Rebecca shot to her feet. That's impossible. She wouldn't cut us out completely. I didn't say she cut you out. Please sit down, Rebecca. Patricia waited until Rebecca slowly sank back into her chair. To my daughters, Vanessa and Rebecca, I leave the sum of $100,000 each, to be distributed immediately upon probate. 100,000 each? Vanessa's voice was shaking. That's it? Out of a $7 million estate? 6.7 million, Chen corrected quietly. He looked uncomfortable now. Patricia wasn't finished. However, there is a conditional clause. Let me read it exactly as Margaret wrote it. She looked at Vanessa and Rebecca. If either or both of my daughters attempt to contest this will, pressure my husband to relinquish his rights, or take any legal action to claim a larger share of my estate within 120 days of my death, they shall forfeit their inheritance entirely. In such case, their share shall be donated to the Alberta Cancer Foundation. Nobody spoke. You could have heard a pin drop in that conference room. Vanessa finally found her voice. This is insane. She wasn't in her right mind. Thomas manipulated her. Patricia pulled out another document. I have a psychological evaluation dated 1 week before the will was executed. Margaret underwent cognitive testing at my recommendation. Perfect score. She was completely sound of mind. And before you ask, I have 3 witnesses to the signing, including a physician. Why would she do this? Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. Because she knew you. Patricia's voice softened slightly. Margaret told me everything, girls. About how you stopped calling after she married Thomas. About how you skipped her wedding. About how every conversation became about your eventual inheritance. She said you looked at her like a retirement fund instead of your mother. That's not true, Vanessa protested weakly. Isn't it? You arrived at your mother's house the day after her funeral demanding that Thomas sign away his rights. You didn't ask how he was doing. You didn't offer sympathy. You immediately started calculating how to maximize your share of her estate. Rebecca was crying now, actual tears running down her carefully made-up face. We loved our mother. Maybe you did. But you loved her money more, and Margaret knew it. Patricia turned to Chen. Mr. Chen, I assume your clients told you they were the primary beneficiaries? Chen's jaw was tight. They informed me they expected to inherit the estate, yes. Then you were working under false pretenses. I suggest you discuss representation fees with Vanessa and Rebecca. I have a feeling they may have difficulty paying your retainer now. Chen stood. Vanessa, Rebecca, I think we need to discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, Vanessa spat. This will is fraudulent. We're going to fight it. Then you'll get nothing, Patricia said calmly. Not $1. I'll personally ensure that the Cancer Foundation gets every penny Margaret intended for you. Is that really what you want? To honor your mother's memory by proving she was right about you? The question hung in the air. Vanessa looked at Rebecca. Rebecca looked at the floor. Slowly, they gathered their things and left the conference room without another word. Chen followed, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. I sat there, still processing everything I'd just heard. Patricia closed her briefcase and looked at me kindly. Are you all right, Thomas? Margaret knew, I said quietly. She knew they'd do this. Yes. She was heartbroken about it, but she wasn't surprised. She said her daughters had become strangers to her over the years, that they called on her birthday and Christmas, but only to ask about her health and whether she'd updated her estate plan. I never wanted her money. She knew that too. That's why she loved you. You saw her as Margaret, not as an ATM. Patricia stood. The house is yours. The business is yours. Everything she built is yours. That's what she wanted. Can you live with that? I thought about Margaret. About our 4 years together. About how she'd hold my hand while we watched television. About how she'd laugh at my terrible jokes. About how she'd tell me she felt like she'd been given a second chance at happiness. I can live with it, I said. But I'm going to do something with that money. Something Margaret would approve of. 3 months later, I established the Margaret Whitmore Foundation. It provides scholarships for mature students returning to education after losing a spouse. Every penny from Margaret's investment portfolios went into it. I kept the house because it was our home, and I can't quite bring myself to leave it yet. The business, I signed over to the manager who'd been running it for years. Margaret had always said she trusted him more than anyone. Christopher helped me set everything up. He didn't want me to give the money away. He said I deserved it after what Margaret's daughters put me through. But I told him it wasn't about deserving. It was about honoring Margaret's memory in a way that would have made her proud. Vanessa and Rebecca took their 100,000 each. They never contested the will. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Vanessa's husband left her shortly after. Apparently, he'd been counting on a larger inheritance too. Rebecca sold her marketing agency and moved back to Calgary, though I've never run into her. I don't hate them. I'm not even angry anymore. I just feel sad for them. Sad that they'll never know what they lost. Not the money, but the chance to really know their mother in those final years. The chance to see her happy and loved and whole after so many years of grief. I'm 67 years old. I live alone in a house that's too big for one person. But every morning, I have coffee in the kitchen where Margaret used to read her crossword puzzles. Every evening, I sit in the living room where we watched our favorite shows. And sometimes, when it's very quiet, I swear I can still hear her laugh. Christopher visits every weekend now. He says he doesn't want me to be lonely. I think he just likes the home-cooked meals. He's a good son, the kind of son who never once asked about inheritance, who only asked if I was okay. That's the difference, I suppose, between people who love you and people who love what you can give them. Margaret knew that difference, and she made sure that in death she could protect the people who actually mattered. So if you're watching this and you're thinking about your own legacy, think about this. Your will isn't just about distributing assets. Looking back on my own story, I can admit something. Honestly, don't do what I almost did. Don't make life-changing decisions while you're drowning in grief. I signed papers without reading them because I was exhausted, broken, and alone. In many betrayal stories, people wait for that exact moment when pain makes you careless. But this experience taught me lessons I will carry for the rest of my life. The first lesson is simple family is proven by actions, not blood. The second lesson is that money never equals love, only presence does. The third lesson, and the hardest one, is faith. I believe God sees what we cannot. When people plot in silence, God still listens. And when everything feels lost, God can place protection where you least expect it. That truth is at the heart of this grandpa's story. This wasn't just my pain, it was a mirror. Many betrayal stories begin with trust and end with awakening. This grandpa's story reminds us to slow down, seek counsel, and protect ourselves when emotions run high. And if there's one more thing I've learned, it's this peace is worth more than winning. That is the quiet wisdom behind this grandpa story, and the reason betrayal stories don't have to define how we end. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment, share this video, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue these conversations together. Thank you for staying with me until the end. And a final note. The next story includes some fictionalized elements created for educational and storytelling purposes, if that's not for you. Feel free to exit and choose content that better suits you.